Hey, it is Wednesday, which means it's Backstage with Cindy Rowe, and I have a very special guest today, Danica Keeton of Weddings by Danica. Hey, how are you?
Hi, Cindy. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for joining me today. Why don't you give a little bit of heads up on exactly what you do, your little story for our viewers?
Of course. So I am the owner and head planner and coordinator at Weddings by Danica. So this is a little, not little, but a business that I started back in 2019, actually, when I got engaged. I fell in love with wedding planning, and I have a vast event planning kind of knowledge and experience base to kind of back that up. But I thought, you know what? I really enjoy doing this. So why not dip my toes in, see how it goes? The first wedding I did was, oh gosh, probably 9 months after I started. But at that wedding, I had booked one of her bridesmaids. So I was like, okay, obviously I'm doing something right where if I'm at a wedding, booking more clients. So that was kind of the motivation that I needed to really get my butt in gear and start focusing more on the wedding planning kind of side of things. And then, COVID happened. But it was honestly kind of a great time because I was able to take a step back and really examine what it is that I was doing, what I was offering, the kind of clients that I wanted. And it really kind of opened the doors for me. We're sitting here looking at about 30 weddings between, I think it's in 2 weeks and the end of November. So we really have kind of hit the ground running
Wow.
now that COVID's hopefully, fingers crossed, coming to an end here. I was even able to hire on 2 interns at the beginning of 2021 who are about to graduate, per se, to become full-time wedding planners and coordinators here come June 1st. So it's been quite a couple years since I started, and I'm just blessed that I've been able to, make a name for myself in this industry.
That's awesome. So when I got married, I fell in love with wedding planning too. And when my friends started getting married, then I was like, oh, like that, I should do this. I should do this. Well, then I had a little kid, a baby at the time. And I'm like, I don't know if I could do this with a baby, like, knowing that weddings happen mostly on the weekend. So how do you balance the social life and your wedding planning business with the weekend? So that's my number one question.
Right? That's everyone's number one question. Everyone's was like, Danica, how do you have time? Because I don't just do weddings. I work full time. I volunteer. I hold leadership roles in the community. The best advice I have for something like that, stick to a schedule. I know it sounds easy, but that is the only way that I can do anything. I constantly am looking at my calendar, preparing for the next day, that weekend, etc. And what's nice is I have such a fantastic support system in place, whether that's my colleagues at work, my friends, my interns, my family, that most people understand what kind of chaotic life I lead. So they are just incredible. They know that I may not be available at the drop of a hat or every weekend when they want to do something, and they're all always willing to work with me too. So that has been fantastic. But yes, sticking to a schedule and also remembering to be flexible and to make sure you also take a day off is the main way that I'm able to do everything.
Yeah. And I think that goes for any entrepreneur or small business owner, especially when we get started, to avoid the burnout, right? Because that's where I
Absolutely.
saw a major struggle at the beginning, where I was working all the time. I didn't really have those set hours. So when a client contacted me, I was like, Drew, right, getting right back to them. Now I have hours, and if a client texts me at 8 o'clock at night, most likely they just had a thought that came into mind and they wanted to share it with me. They're not expecting me to reply right back.
Mhm.
And I can tell if they do, like by the urgency of the text, right? So I agree with you. Taking a day off is really, really important. Did you go to school for event planning? Is that what you majored in? Oh, you laughed.
I was
That's
a
awesome.
biology major, believe it or not.
Oh,
So for the first 3 years of my college experience, I majored in biology. I thought I wanted to be either a doctor or a veterinarian. That is obviously not the path that I ended up going down. I was very fortunate that I went to a liberal arts school, Augustana, in the Quad Cities, where you
yeah.
have to take kind of courses that are outside of your major. In my junior year, I was fortunate enough to take a public relations class that changed my life. I fell in love with it. We had to create a public relations plan for, oh gosh, it was some type of like establishment at school where you could do like after hours events, this, that, and the other, how you would get the student population engaged, but you couldn't have alcohol or anything like that. So we came up with some crazy ideas. And I just loved the whole process of going through all of that, that it made me really obviously consider, do I want to be a biologist? Is this the path I want to go down? And
Right.
ultimately it was not. And I was so lucky that I had most of like my prereqs and all those like extra classes you had to take already under my belt, that I was able to fit the whole communications major in my senior year of college.
Oh my God.
So I ended up graduating with a major in communications with a focus in nonprofit work.
Awesome. And have
Yeah.
you always worked with nonprofits since graduation?
There has been two instances where I did not. That was right out of college. I worked for American Marketing and Publishing, selling phone book advertising space. And then the job I had right out of that was at Oak Street Health as their community relations manager. And that's kind of what really pushed me to go back to the nonprofit world. All my jobs and volunteer experience in college centered around the nonprofit world. So it was kind of reopening my eyes in a way, because I was able to be in the community every single day working with people who are a little less fortunate than us. I was at food banks all the time, just talking to people, getting them the assistance they need, getting them familiar with the clinic that I worked at. And that's kind of what drove me back to the nonprofit world, where I am proud to say I have been since 2018.
Awesome. Very cool. So, what is one of the biggest skills or traits that a wedding planner needs to have?
Probably to be flexible. So a huge part of what we do is creating a timeline with our clients and with the vendors that we work with that day. But the timeline is more a guideline at this point, because the day of, you can't start your ceremony typically right at 3:30 when you say you are going to, because guests are still arriving. I can't control how fast they get out of their car. So you have to like really learn how to be flexible and not let those little things get in the way. One of the first weddings I ever did ran an hour ahead. So I had to figure out how we were going to get dinner out. You have to be flexible, you have to be creative, and you have to, just kind of go with the flow most of the time, which is hard for a lot of people in this industry, because you want everything to go a certain way. But the reality of it is, it doesn't always happen that way.
Yeah. How do you manage the stress the day of with those bridezillas?
Oh, the day of. That's after. The day of, yes. The day of, I'm lucky I work with a team, so I'm never there by myself. Before I had my interns, it was my husband who I referred to as my intern. That was kind of my backup for the day. And knowing like if something starts going wrong, just to take a step back, take a deep breath, pull that person aside if you have to, vent for a quick 2 minutes, and then you have to get back to the job, because you're at a wedding. It's going to go on without you, whether you're prepared for it or not.
Yeah. That's awesome advice though. Like just, step back and take a breath. And most of the people don't know what is supposed to be happening, right? So
Exactly.
only you do, and probably the bride, but like if you can control those two people, then, nobody else knows that, this was supposed to happen right now, and just keep that mentality. So
and
I don't
even
know
the bride, they don't wear a watch. So they truly have no idea what time it is and what time things are supposed to be happening. You are the only person that knows exactly what that day is supposed to look like.
Yeah. I don't know if you're aware, but I have event planning in my background as well. And I loved it. I really, truly loved it. And I love knowing, working from the very beginning all the way to see the finished product and then be like, hell yeah,
It's
that's exactly what I
amazing.
needed. That's exactly what I envisioned. And just, I don't know, just the whole thing together.
Oh,
And I'm such a detailed person. So I loved all the little details of the event planning. But very stressful, very stressful.
oh, yes. It is not for the faint of heart. Oh, my goodness. I even look at myself sometimes like, Danica, what are you doing? And then you always have to remember your why. You do this because you love it.
Yeah.
You love to see the
Mhm.
look on people's faces when, oh my God, I'm such a crier. I cry every wedding, especially those first looks. Like that alone is my why. I love
Yeah.
seeing the love.
And so throughout your business, have you formed some really good collaborations with other wedding people? I mean, I guess like what I'm thinking of is like the photographers, the venues,
Oh,
you know,
absolutely. I love the vendors that we have been so fortunate to work with in the Rockford area. I'm not going to name names because that would probably take too long and I don't want to leave anyone out. But some of my now very close friends are people that I have met in the wedding industry, and I am so thankful for that. It's such, especially in Rockford, such a tight knit group of people because
Mhm.
there's not a whole lot of us. So you really get to know people. Like I'm even friends with other wedding planners and coordinators because, well, one, I can't work every single wedding in the Rockford area. I am one person with two others at my side. So I think it's extremely important to develop and cultivate and steward all of those relationships to the best of your ability.
How did you start that process?
You just have to put yourself out there. I always message people like, hi, I'm Danica. I see that you're a wedding photographer. Like, let's get coffee sometime. That's typically how most of those relationships get started. It's not people I've worked with before. It's, I want to get to know you. I really like your work. How can we potentially work together in the future? I'm fortunate I am able to put on like different styled shoots in the area where I can invite a lot of these new vendors to come work with us for the day and create something magical. So yeah, it's a lot of fun getting to know all these new people in the community.
Yeah, yeah. And you've got such a great personality that it's probably very easy and you're very comfortable doing that. And that's probably another clue if you succeed in this industry is, having that type of personality. But we actually have a
Absolutely.
question. What's the most creative you've gotten with hosting weddings during the pandemic?
So I've seen a lot of backyard weddings, and those are getting so creative and so beautiful. I actually
Yeah.
had a client back in August. She has a studio at her house that she has now like renovated to also be a wedding venue, and I just think that's phenomenal. They typically host like fire walking out of the backyard of their house, and for
Oh,
right, it was it's so cool. And for their ceremony, they actually did a fire walk, or not ceremony, their rehearsal. They did a fire walk ceremony kind of thing to kickstart everything, where they had all their guests get a piece of paper, write their intentions for the Mr. and Miss as they were getting their life together started. And oh my
yeah.
gosh, it was the coolest thing that I have ever seen. So I think this pandemic has really gotten people to kind of look at what they want in their wedding and how they can go ahead and make that happen because people aren't having those big 300 people weddings anymore. It's those close, intimate people where you can spend a little more money on the fun things, which gets me super
Mhm.
excited. We also have another bride coming up in June. She's going to do caricatures for all of her guests for a wedding favor. I'm like, that is cool. I want to get one. So it's been
Wow.
great for really, kind of making the wedding industry different. It's not the same old traditional stuff anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, some of the pictures, I didn't get to go to a COVID wedding or whatever this past year. Um, but I love, seeing some of the pictures of them just having that intimate moment versus this grand thing. And I think it's allowed us to get back to really what's important, and that's being
Absolutely.
surrounded by your close knit people and really celebrating the love. The other thing, like my nephew's getting married next month, and um, they're having breakfast for dinner because
Ooh.
they both love breakfast for dinner, and they were hesitant at first because it's not typical. And they actually put it on the invitation so they would warn people. And I'm like, that's how it should be. If that's one of your guys' favorite meals together, that should be how it is. And I'm just like, I love that. Like, the people are really embracing themselves as a couple and forming their wedding around that. And I think, going forward, I think it's only going to be more like that, and the characters. That's awesome.
Right. I'm so excited. It's going to be such a fun thing.
Yeah. So, okay, you said you have interns, which is exciting for such a new business because you've only been in business for a little while. So what was like the determining factors of you expanding into getting the internship?
So part of it, I was lucky enough to shadow under a wedding coordinator out of Chicago, Wendy, A Day of Divas. She was fantastic to help answer any of my questions, really get to like teach me the industry as someone who was getting started. That ever since then, I knew I wanted to provide that service to someone else. So I started getting a little busier and working full time. I'm like, holy cow, this is getting to be a lot for one person. And my husband told me, he's like, I don't want to go to weddings anymore. I'm getting bored of this. So I kind of had no choice. I enjoyed having the two people there because so many weddings, someone forgets something. One of the funniest ones was actually a good friend of ours. They ran out of ice in cups within like 30 minutes of the cocktail hour. So that kind of reinforced that ideal of I always want to have two people at a wedding myself and one other at a wedding in case something like this happens, because I don't want the bride and groom to be stuck if I have to go and run and get something. So that's kind of why I did it that way. And I thought I'd hire someone as an intern rather than just hiring a wedding coordinator right off the bat, because I enjoy teaching people and kind of getting someone who really wanted to be involved in the industry and just had no idea how to get there. Because everyone loves the wedding industry. People hear that I'm a wedding planner and they want to learn all about that. Mm-hmm. So I knew that there would be at least one person out there that I could find to get on my team. And I was lucky enough to find two people. And oh my gosh, Alex and Brianna are fantastic. Like, I may tear up talking about them. They have really just knocked it out of the park. Both of them have just stepped up, and I have no hesitations promoting them to be full-time wedding coordinators come June 1st. Like, they're probably ready for it already, but it's hard to let go sometimes. Right, but it's been fantastic, and it's been such a great opportunity for me to really develop as a leader as well, because I've never had two people that report directly to me that I am completely in control of, on top of like owning the business. So it really taught me how to become more patient, hold myself accountable, and to learn how to trust people and to foster different relationships as well.
Yeah, is it a challenging process to hire interns?
Yes and no.
I would love that. I love teaching. I love mentoring. And it's been, an idea that's tossed around in my head. And obviously somebody in college, you want to make sure they get credit if you can't pay them. And like, you want to do it legal and correct. So I'm just curious if that process.
There's a lot to look into for it. So my interns, they are contracted on a per wedding basis. Well, technically right now they are unpaid interns. I do give them a small stipend based on the weddings that they are currently working. But when they become full-time wedding coordinators, I'll be signing a contract for every single wedding they work, stating that they will work this set amount of hours, that they can abide by whatever agreement that bride and I have in place, etc. Onboarding them and finding the interns was very interesting in itself. I essentially just posted on my Facebook page and was like, hey, if anyone's interested. I had way too many people reach out. I was very overwhelmed. So a lot of it was looking through and having conversations to see if their personality matches with mine, because I'll be their boss. The skills themselves didn't matter so much as the character did, because as I'm getting my master's right now as well, and as I was reminded on Monday, you can teach the skills, but you can't teach someone how to have a certain personality or character, essentially. So I made sure to look for that, someone that was a people person that I could get along with, that I could see my brides getting along with. And like I said, I lucked out. I have two fantastic individuals, Alex and Brianna, that are working with me. And I'm excited to see the people that we're able to bring on in the future.
That's awesome. We have another question. I'm wondering how you manage your time efficiently despite also being in school and working full time. Any tips would be great. That's a good question.
It really is. So I think, like I said earlier, having a schedule and trying to stick to it has been a godsend to me. I don't just put my appointments in there, though. I put in like when I have to vacuum the house or what days are laundry day. We have a reoccurring day that says, hey, idiots, take out the garbage, because that was the chore we forgot to do the most. And that's probably one of the more important ones. So don't be afraid to like put things in there, no matter how small they are. At my job, I even put in my lunch sometimes so someone doesn't schedule over that hour that I desperately need for me time. And also remembering to put in that me time as well. If you don't have a day off, then your body is going to force you to have a day off at some point, and it'll probably be on one of your busiest days. So making sure you're kind of combating that and putting yourself first. And that also kind of ties in with knowing your limits as well. I have such a hard time saying no. that was one of the things I really tried to work on during COVID and coming out of the pandemic, was knowing myself, knowing what I can handle, and not being afraid to say no. What's wonderful is that I'm able to volunteer so much of my time and skills as a wedding and event planner that I now have different nonprofits and different groups reaching out to me. We need you on our committee. Can you please come help? And 2019 Danica would have said, oh my God, yes, and would have sacrificed all of that me time that I love and desperately need. But 2021 Danica's, I'm sorry, now's not the time. I can help you try to find someone, though. I can dig into my contacts to see. So it's, the balancing act is something I continue to work on, but definitely trying to stick to a schedule, throwing in all those little things, and then taking a day for yourself those are my best tips.
Those are awesome tips. And those are awesome tips for any small business owner, regardless if they're going to school or not. But so you're going to school to get your master's, you're working full time, you're running a successful wedding business. Wow, that's crazy. We also have another question. They're rolling in. For someone who is working with a small budget, what are some suggestions you can give in order to cut costs but not look cheap?
Yes.
Ooh.
So first and foremost, your printed materials. You do not need printed materials. You do not need programs or menus. Those are the first things I always tell my brides to just nix if they have them in their budget and they're trying to save money. Favors as well are not something that's a necessity. You're paying for their entire meal and sometimes all of their drinks that day as well. And that's more than enough considering what some of these plates cost at some venues. In addition to that, always look into food trucks. You'd be surprised at the cost saving there. Sometimes you can kind of omit like your rentals of your place settings, your forks, knives, etc., by doing just tacos that are wrapped up in aluminum foil or just served in one of those paper boats. So that's a fantastic option as well. Your florals as well. Make sure you have a fantastic relationship with your florist, because a lot of times you can repurpose your bouquets, for instance, and kind of remake a new centerpiece utilizing those at your head or sweetheart table. So there are a million little ways where you can kind of cut costs and make it work. But you also definitely need to figure out your budget before you start booking your vendors. Yeah. I see a lot of couples that get into a lot of trouble financially because they see this photographer like, oh my God, I have to have them for my wedding. But that photographer is $4,000 and that's half of a $10,000 budget that most couples have. So sitting down and figuring out your budget and knowing where your money typically goes is such a huge thing, which that's something we help a lot of our clients out with. I have developed a budget spreadsheet tool that shows between a $5,000 and a $50,000 wedding where couples' money typically goes for about a 100 to 150 person wedding. And I think that really opens a lot of people's eyes like, oh, okay, maybe I don't need to spend $3,000 on a wedding dress because that money could be used somewhere else.
Yeah, that's wow. the other one of the tips with the florist, like I remember back in the day when I first got married, like the flowers that I chose weren't in season. And I had a good florist, and she's like, "Are these exactly what you have to have, or you just want them?" And I'm like, "Well, I think it's pretty." And she's like, "Well, can we do something very similar, but with flowers in season? It will cut your cost almost 50%." And I was like, yeah. Like flowers are not like, yeah, I wanted beautiful, but I didn't need to
Oh, yeah.
spend that kind of money to have something that I just thought was pretty, right? And
Exactly.
listening to my
I made the
florist
same
was,
mistake at my wedding. I wanted peonies, but I got married in September. So I had to settle for garden roses. But hopefully you find vendors that are willing to work with you and be honest about that. Like, hey, this flower is not in season. So you're looking at spending a lot more money because we have to get it shipped here.
yeah. And so, I mean, but that really solidifies one of the reasons people should hire a professional like you, because you already have some of those kind of relationships, or you can help guide the bride in the right direction. I mean, I think that would be one of the best values, of your budget, is to hire a professional. What are some other perks of hiring a wedding planner?
Just the knowledge that comes with it. Hopefully, the couples we're working with, they are only getting married one time. Obviously, we're in the 21st century. We both know that that's not the case. So, having someone that has gone through this, like my interns will have about 30 weddings under their belt by the end of this year. That kind of experience is invaluable. You can't just casually, well, I mean, you probably can casually go to 30 weddings, but you're not going to be learning the behind the scenes stuff, what it takes beforehand to get everything prepared, the questions you need to ask your vendors, how to make the day flow seamlessly. So you're essentially paying for our knowledge and our experience when you book with us. Because a lot of our couples, they don't even know what questions to ask in our inquiry process because they've never gone through this. It's like, okay, well, these are the questions you should ask, and I'm going to tell you why and why you should book with me because I've done this. And that's usually what it boils down to.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we are like almost done with the half hour. Like I told you, it goes super, super fast. And it was awesome that we had some really good questions. But I love to give you the opportunity to promote yourself, how people can find you, anything special that you want to say. It's all on you now.
Well, perfect. So I am with Weddings by Danica. We are a wedding planning and coordination company based out of the Rockford area. Our goal is to always provide a stress-free experience for our brides. We like to meet with you guys and be as available as we possibly can and to really develop a relationship with our couples because we play such a huge role that day. I'm very lucky to say that most of our couples become friends after we're done working with them. And that's another part of my why that I do this. So like I said, we primarily service the Rockford area. We have quite a few wonderful vendors that we work with, and we have a preferred vendor list that we provide to all of our clients, as well as additional planning documents to help keep everything organized. So with every wedding planning package, you always have two people that are there, our head coordinator and one of our assistants. If you're lucky, you'll get two coordinators that day. But we definitely love weddings. So anytime we are asked to, whether that's provide a free hour consult, which we do to cover one aspect of your big day, to just, meeting for coffee to brainstorm ideas, we're always available because it's what we love to do.
Awesome. So I have down on the little ticker your Facebook, Weddings by Danica with an extra A because she's extra special. See, we can work it in there.
I love it.
And then your website is weddingsbydanica.com. Is there any other extra thing that you want to share before we head out for today?
Thank you for having me, Cindy. It was such a great time chatting with you. And for the people that were asking questions, Marisa and Janessa, thank you so much, ladies. It was a pleasure seeing you both online.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you again. It was great learning a little bit more about what you do. And for those people that watch this on the replay, if you have a question for either myself or Danica, drop it in there. We'll make sure we get back to you. But we are done for now. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Perfect. Thank you, Cindy.